Okay, this is one of the most popular new fly patterns. It's a takeoff of the parachute atoms, and most everyone is familiar with it, but it's the Purple Haze. And we're going to put a little bit of a kick to it. We're going to tie it with a biot body. But anyway, you don't necessarily need purple thread for this fly. Everything else is basically purple, but you know, the thread's not going to show up very much on the pattern. So anyway, I have a dry fly hook in the vise, and I'm just going to dress it with some 8/0 thread. Okay, so to tie in the tail for this fly is going to be made of both grizzly and coachman brown hackle fibers. And so I've pulled some of the spade hackles out off of one of my capes, and just probably 10 or so fibers. So you're gonna preen the fibers back, and then just come in and grab a selection of those. So I've got several of the grizzly fibers, so I'm going to lay those in roughly about the length of the hook, or the body of the hook. I'll just kind of tie those in and let those sit there for a second, just with a few wraps. And I'm going to do the same with the brown now. So now I can take the brown and lay those right on top of the grizzly, and now unwrap those and kind of roll those around in my finger a little bit to mix them up. It's a little trick I stole from Charlie Craven, so I will give him credit for that, even though he ties kind of ratty flies and has hot dog fingers. But this is a great trick that I learned from him. So I'm going to tie those in and just let those hang out like that. They're, again, about the same length of the body of the fly. Alright, so instead of using, what are people use? Spanflex or some type of rubber material or floss or whatever for this fly, we're going to use a purple turkey biot. So I've taken one of these little fibers off, and I'm going to tie that in notched down, so that gives me the nice rib when I wrap it up the hook. And if you want to learn more about biots and how to tie them in and how to get them to look different ways, Curtis did a full-on nerdalysis on biots that I have too much adult onset ADD to write myself, so it's actually pretty informative if you're into that kind of nerdy crap. Okay, so this is super glue, just a tiny bit, because the biot is probably the weakest link on this fly, so I want to reinforce it with some super glue. And then I'm just going to take it and wrap that forward using the rotary feature on my vise. Sorry, I'm all fingers right now. Okay, so there we go. We've got a nice little body on that. We'll trim off the excess. Okay, so the post for this fly is going to be hairline parapost material, and so this is kind of thin stuff. I'm actually going to double it over for this size of fly. So I've got that tied in just right on top of the hook shank. And the reason I don't come from underneath the hook shank is, you have a big spot of white parapost material that you have to cover up with dubbing. So I'm just going to pull those directly or straight up and wrap around the base of those and create a nice parachute. And it's important to use just the right amount of material when you do that, because if you don't, it's going to be hard to wrap your post up and down like I just did if you have too little parachute material or parachute post material. Okay, now we're going to tie in the hackle. So the Purple Haze, like in Adams, uses two different colors of hackle, grizzly and coachman brown. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to line those up. I have shiny sides facing the same direction, and that's critical when you tie this in, because if you don't tie those in with the hackles facing the same way, then it's not going to be a very clean parachute. So I'm going to clean off the stems so that I have a generous amount of stem to tie those in. Alright, with my thread on the back of the parachute post, I'm going to put those stems in at a 45 degree angle, and with 2 wraps I can grab those stems and now draw those directly up and wrap those up the parachute post like I did my thread, and then back down again, and those are tied in. Okay, so now once I'm here, I just need to tie in a little bit of a thorax, and I'm actually going to use UV purple eye stub. So I mean, if you don't like a lot of flash in your flies, you could just use you know, a more dulled down purple dubbing, but we're using eye stub for shock factor. That, and this is the color of shirt Curtis has on right now. Just kidding, he's not wearing a shirt. So I'm just going to wrap a nice little thorax, trying to keep my parachute post materials out of there. Okay, so once I've got a little bit of a thorax built up here, what I'm going to do is leave my thread, you know, wrapped around the hook or the parachute posts and hanging behind it. And I'm going to take both of these hackles at the same time, and I'm going to wrap those down the parachute posts. Each wrap of hackle underneath the previous. So because we're using 2 of these, it should take only about 3 wraps before we're down to the bottom. So you can see there we are with our fly. Sorry, I like to keep it at this angle so I can see it better, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my thread and go under the wrapped hackle but over the unwrapped hackle with just 2 or 3 wraps of thread, and just let my thread hang, and now my hackle is completely tied in and I can cut it off. Okay, alright, we're ready to finish off the fly, and now instead of using a whip finish here, I'm just going to take some super glue and put it on a bodkin, just barely enough that you can see it on there, and I'm going to come in underneath my hackle on the last place that my thread touched, which is the back side of this parachute. And that super glue will seep in and seal it all in place. Alright, now all I need to do is trim off my parachute right about there. I like them kind of shorter. And you know, on this you can feel free to use, you know, orange parapost material or whatever color you want to give you a little bit more visibility. But anyway, there's a little bit of a kicked up Purple Haze pattern. It's been a very effective pattern here in the western United States. But chances are, if you have fish that like to eat dry flies, they'll eat this wherever you are. Anyway, there it is. All the materials and more found on store.flyfishfood.com.